The year 536 AD, a seemingly unremarkable marker in the annals of time, yet it marks a period that history books often glide over, a gaping void in the tapestry of human memory. We speak of plagues, of wars, of famines that carved their scars deep into the earth. But what if I told you there was a cataclysm so profound, so utterly terrifying, that its true nature was deliberately, meticulously erased? What if humanity, in its nascent struggle for survival, collectively decided to forget the year the sun vanished, the year the world nearly ended? Our journey begins not with grand battles or the rise and fall of empires, but with a whisper carried on the wind, a whisper of an unnatural dusk that fell not for a day, but for months, stretching into years. Sound, a soft, almost imperceptible sigh of wind. Imagine a world where the sun, the very source of life and warmth, became a pale, distant memory, not obscured by passing clouds, but by something far more sinister, a veil drawn across the heavens that seemed to devour its light. The chronicles of the time, scarce and scattered, speak of a dry fog that descended upon Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia. A fog unlike any other, one that brought not moisture, but a chilling, pervasive gloom. Procopius, a Byzantine historian, recorded it with chilling brevity. For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon during this whole year, and it seemed to be in a permanent eclipse. Camera focuses on a specific passage on the parchment, highlighting the date and Procopius's name. Permanent eclipse. The words themselves carry the weight of an unimaginable dread. What could cause such a phenomenon? What cosmic horror could so completely blot out the life-giving light that sustained civilizations? Archaeological digs, centuries later, have unearthed curious anomalies from this period. Skeletons found huddled together in mass graves, not victims of battle, but of slow, agonizing starvation. Fields, once fertile and abundant, rendered barren, their topsoil infused with a fine, almost imperceptible dust. A dust that defies easy categorization. Visual. A slow zoom on a meticulously recreated map of the known world in 536 AD, with a dark spreading cloud emanating from a point near Iceland. This dust, now almost a footnote in obscure geological surveys, was the silent killer, the harbinger of a darkness that promised annihilation. The official explanation, decades, even centuries later, was always vague. Climatic shifts, volcanic activity, a time of great hardship. But the fragmented records, the hushed tales passed down through generations before being silenced, paint a far more terrifying picture. They speak of fear, yes, but also of a primal dread, a sense that the very fabric of reality had been rent. The world was plunged into a twilight that lasted for 18 months, in some regions even longer. Crops failed, rivers froze in summer, and a chilling cold gripped the land, bringing with it not just hunger, but despair so profound it shattered the human spirit. And yet, this era, this pivotal moment when humanity teetered on the brink, remains largely unexamined, almost deliberately forgotten. Why? What secrets did the ever-present gloom conceal? Was it merely an act of nature, a cosmic accident, or something far more deliberate, far more sinister? The answers, I warn you, are for the faint of heart, for they speak of a fragility we often choose to ignore, a darkness that lies just beneath the surface of our ordered world. We are about to open a file that was meant to stay closed. Camera slowly pulls back from the parchment, revealing it to be part of a vast, dusty archive. A shadowed hand reaches out, its fingers brushing the fragile paper. Sound. A faint, metallic clang like a distant lock turning. The true terror of 536 AD was not just the ashfall, but what it unleashed among those who survived. The first whispers of the unnatural gloom did not come from the heart of the Roman Empire, but from its farthest reaches, carried on the trade winds that crisscrossed the vast Eurasian steppes. Caravans returning from the east, laden with silks and spices, brought back not just goods, but tales of an unnerving twilight that had settled over lands far beyond the known world. At first, they were dismissed as travelers' exaggerations, the fanciful stories of men who had spent too long under the scorching desert sun. But then, the stories began to converge, to echo each other with an unsettling consistency. The sagas of the Norsemen, usually filled with tales of gods and giants, suddenly incorporated a new, chilling motif. Fimbulwinter, a winter of winters, lasting for years, where the sun became a sickly orb. Visual, an ancient faded map of Scandinavia with a red circle pulsing around a settlement. Sound, the howl of a wolf, faint and far off. These weren't mere seasonal changes. These were profound disruptions to the natural order, disrupting the very rhythm of life. Grain, once a dependable bounty, withered on the stalk. Livestock, disoriented by the perpetual twilight, grew weak and died. In China, court astronomers, meticulous record-keepers of celestial events, noted a startling phenomenon. The sun was obscured and the sky turned dark. The two stars of the Big Dipper were barely visible. Visual, a close-up of a reproduction of an ancient Chinese astrological chart, showing faded star patterns, with a dark smudge obscuring the sun. This wasn't merely a partial eclipse. It was a profound dimming of the sun's very luminosity. The Chinese annals spoke of widespread famine and drought, followed by unseasonal snowfalls. The records are stark, clinical, yet beneath their detached language, one can sense the rising panic, the gnawing dread. Imagine the psychological impact. For millennia, humanity had looked to the sun as a symbol of hope, of rebirth, of divine favor. Its daily cycle was the bedrock of their understanding of the world. And that bedrock was crumbling. The sun was a ghost, a memory. What did it mean when the gods themselves seemed to turn their faces away? Superstition, always a potent force, began to fester and spread like a plague itself. Whispers of divine wrath, of ancient curses, of monstrous beings stirring in the unholy twilight, began to take root in the minds of the desperate. The dry fog that Procopius described wasn't uniform. Its effects varied, intensified in certain regions, hinting at a localized, yet devastating origin. But its reach was global, a testament to the sheer scale of the event. The ash-laden air, a constant reminder of the unseen cataclysm, coated everything in a fine, gritty layer. It clung to clothes, seeped into homes, and most insidiously entered the lungs. Visual, a single candle flame struggling against an invisible, oppressive haze. Dust motes dance in the weak light. Modern analysis of ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica has confirmed a massive volcanic eruption around 536 AD, depositing sulfates and ash layers that dwarf those of even the most infamous eruptions in recorded history. But the sheer scale of the darkness suggests something more than a single event. One theory posits a chain reaction, a series of colossal eruptions. Another, far more disturbing, suggests a single cataclysmic explosion so violent, so unprecedented, that it hurled enough material into the stratosphere to literally dim the sun for well over a year. But even these scientific explanations, rational as they are, fail to capture the sheer terror of living through it. They don't explain the sudden, pervasive sense of dread that settled over humanity like a shroud. They don't explain the psychological scars that led to the deliberate erasure of this period from collective memory. The records, those few that survived the subsequent purges and revisions, speak of widespread societal collapse, not just from famine and disease, but from an almost spiritual desolation. People lost their will to live, their reason to hope. The absence of light was not just physical, it was existential. And in this protracted darkness, fear began to twist human nature, leading to acts of desperation and cruelty that would make even the most hardened warrior flinch. As the twilight deepened, an ugliness began to surface, hinting at a truth far more disturbing than a mere natural disaster. What unspeakable deeds were committed under the cloak of that eternal dusk? Camera lingers on the map, the red circle pulsating, then slowly fades to black. In the scriptoria of the Abbey of St. Gall, nestled in the verdant valleys of what would one day become Switzerland, Brother Alaric diligently recorded the daily life of the monastery. His chronicles, usually filled with mundane entries of harvests, liturgical observances, and the occasional skirmish with local brigands, took a sudden, desperate turn in the year of our Lord, 536. Visual, close up on a page from a recreated medieval chronicle. Highlighting the year DLXXVS Roman numerals for 536, his neat, precise script began to falter, growing more frantic, reflecting the turmoil outside and within the abbey walls. The sun, a pale eye in a weeping sky, refuses to warm the earth. Our brethren shiver, even by the hearth. The grain, withered and black, offers no sustenance. Our prayers ascend, but seem to be swallowed by the oppressive gloom. Sound. The monk sighs heavily, a sound of profound weariness. Alaric's entries become a harrowing testament to the unfolding apocalypse. He describes the crops failing year after year, the earth yielding only a meager poison bounty. The famed orchards of St. Gall, once brimming with fruit, now stood as skeletal monuments to a lost season. The true horror, however, wasn't just the famine. It was the psychological toll. Alaric notes how the spirit of man grew dark as the sky. Hope, a fragile flame even in the best of times, flickered and threatened to die out completely. He recounts tales of pilgrims arriving at the abbey gates, not seeking spiritual solace, but begging for scraps of food, their faces hollow, their eyes wild with a fear that went beyond mere hunger. Visual, a blurry shot of emaciated figures silhouetted against a gray sky, walking slowly towards the abbey. Sound, a low, almost guttural moan from outside. His chronicle details the increasing desperation. Raids on neighboring villages became common, not by professional soldiers, but by starving peasants driven to unthinkable acts. The sanctity of the monastery, once inviolable, was constantly threatened. Alaric writes of nights spent huddled in prayer, not just for salvation, but for protection from those who saw the abbey's dwindling stores as their last hope. Brother Thomas, a man of God, was forced to wield a cudgel to ward off the desperate. His tears flowed as he struck a starving mother. God forgive us. But Alaric's most chilling entries concern a shift in human behavior that transcends mere survival. He speaks of a growing malady of the soul, a pervasive despair that led to acts of self-mutilation, infanticide, and a terrifying indifference to suffering. Visual, a quick, almost subliminal flash of a crude drawing in the margin of the chronicle, a skeletal figure holding a vacant-eyed child. The constant darkness, the chilling cold, and the relentless hunger stripped away the veneer of civilization, revealing something primal and monstrous beneath. He notes the rise of strange cults, born of desperation and the pervasive sense of abandonment. People began to worship the very darkness, offering gruesome sacrifices in an attempt to appease whatever unknown entity had swallowed the sun. Alaric, a man of unwavering faith, struggles to comprehend this descent into paganism, this rejection of Christ in favor of ancient bloodthirsty gods. They say the old ways are the true ways. They offer to the hungry earth what little they have left, even their own kin. Sound, a low, guttural chanting, very faint, seems to emanate from the shadows outside the cloister. The monk's final entry from the year 536 is particularly haunting. His hand, once steady, is now shaky, the ink smudged as if by tears. The child, Agatha, starved this morn. Her mother, may she rest in peace, offered her soul to the Night Father only yesterday. There is no warmth left in the world, not in the sky, not in the hearth, not in the human heart. The gloom has entered us all. I pray for the true end. Visual. The camera slowly zooms in on Alaric's trembling hand, still holding the quill poised over the next blank page. The candle flickers violently, threatening to extinguish. This chronicle, a testament to a world gripped by unimaginable horror, was almost lost to time, buried beneath layers of later, more optimistic narratives. But it survives, a testament to a truth that was deemed too awful to remember. And its chilling accounts lead us to a disturbing question. If the darkness entered them, what did they become? Part 4. The Plague of Justinian, a Shadow's Gift, video, opens with a wide, desolate shot of Constantinople, once the gleaming jewel of the Byzantine Empire, now shrouded in an unnatural haze. The iconic Hagia Sophia is barely visible through the gloom. Sound, a low, constant hum, punctuated by the occasional mournful cry of a raven. As if the vanishing sun and the ensuing famine were not enough, another horror descended upon humanity in the years following 536 AD. A scourge so devastating, so swift in its cruelty, that it redefined the very concept of pestilence. This was the Plague of Justinian, a pandemic that would sweep across the known world, claiming tens of millions of lives and forever altering the course of history. But was it merely a coincidence, a random act of fate coinciding with the prolonged darkness, or was there a far more sinister connection? Visual. A stylized map showing the rapid spread of a dark, ominous stain across Europe and North Africa, emanating from Constantinople. Procopius, again, provides a chilling account, describing the plague's arrival in Constantinople in 541 AD. He writes of a disease that struck with terrifying speed, manifesting with fever, swollen glands, buboes, hence bubonic plague, and an almost certain death. Many fell victims to it. And when their bodies wasted away, there was no place to lay them. Sound, a distant frantic cough, followed by silence. The streets of the magnificent city, once bustling with life, became choked with the dying and the dead. The air, already thick with the perpetual gloom, now carried the stench of decay. The scientific consensus today links the plague of Justinian to Yersinia pestis, the same bacterium responsible for the Black Death centuries later. But the conditions created by the dry fog and the subsequent crop failures were a perfect breeding ground for such a pandemic. The weakened populations already suffering from malnutrition and chronic cold had severely compromised immune systems. Their bodies, stripped of vital nutrients, were ripe for invasion. Visual, a skeletal hand reaching out from under a rough shroud, almost touching the ground. Sound, the buzz of flies, subtly increasing in volume. But the true mystery lies not just in the plague's virulence, but in its timing. Could the prolonged darkness itself have played a role beyond weakening the populace? Some obscure medical text from the period, rediscovered in forgotten monastic libraries, speak of a corrupting miasma that permeated the air during the years of perpetual twilight. They believed the very air, deprived of the sun's purifying light, had become toxic, allowing disease to flourish unchecked. Visual, a single ray of artificial light, from a lamp or modern equipment, cuts through the dusty air of an archive, illuminating ancient medical scrolls depicting strange afflictions. There are even darker theories, whispered among those who delve into the forbidden corners of history. What if the ashfall itself, the fine, pervasive dust that coated everything, carried more than just inert volcanic particles? What if mixed within that ancient dust were spores, bacteria, or even microscopic organisms, hitherto unknown, unleashed from deep within the earth by the cataclysmic event that blotted out the sun? Yu's dark gift from the deep, brought to the surface by an unprecedented eruption. Sound, a faint, unsettling hum, like something tiny and countless vibrating in the air. The plague disproportionately affected the poor and the malnourished, further exacerbating the social inequalities already strained by the years of darkness. Entire communities were wiped out, leaving behind ghost towns and fields reverting to wilderness. The impact on civilization was immense. The Byzantine Empire, once on the cusp of reasserting its dominance, was crippled. Its armies decimated, its economy shattered. It never fully recovered its former glory. This plague, coming on the heels of the ashfall, was the final brutal blow, shattering the remnants of hope and order. Alaric, in his chronicle, makes a single chilling reference to the plague. Several years after his initial despairing entries, the sickness comes from the gray air itself. It seeks out those with no hope and finds them quickly. Is this God's judgment or the devil's harvest? Visual, a quick, unsettling shot of a medical tool from the period, perhaps a primitive lancet, stained dark. Sound, a distant church bell, tolling slowly, mournfully. The question of causality remains. Was the plague a separate disaster, amplified by the existing catastrophe? Or was it an intrinsic part of the darkness, a deadly consequence of the sun's disappearance? The silence surrounding the years 536, 541 AD is not just about a forgotten volcanic eruption. It's about a period of such sustained horror that it birthed a plague, and perhaps something far worse within the human spirit. And as we dig deeper, we uncover not just death, but a fear so profound it drove men to desperate measures to control the narrative. Part 5. The desperate Emperor Justinian's silence. Video begins with a grand, yet desolate shot of the interior of the Hagia Sophia, still under construction but clearly affected by neglect. Dust motes dance in the weak, diffused light from high windows. Sound. A low, echoing drip of water, almost mournful. Emperor Justinian I, a figure of immense ambition and intellect, found himself at the helm of an empire teetering on the brink of collapse. His vision of a reunited Roman Empire, meticulously laid out in laws and military campaigns, was suffocated by the perpetual gloom and the ravenous plague. History remembers him as a formidable ruler, a unifier, a lawgiver. But the unwritten history, the silenced whispers from the archives, suggest a man consumed by desperation, driven to extraordinary lengths to maintain control amidst an unprecedented catastrophe. Visual, a mosaic of Justinian, is slowly decaying, flaking at the edges, hinting at ruin beneath the grandeur. Sound, a faint, ragged breath, like someone struggling to compose themselves. Justinian's reign coincided directly with the dry fog and the subsequent plague. His ambitious building projects, including the magnificent Hagia Sophia, stalled. His armies, once feared, were decimated not by enemies, but by disease and starvation. The very foundations of his empire, economic and social, began to crack under the relentless pressure of a sunless world. The darkness provided perfect cover for their secret gatherings, and the pervasive fear ensured a steady stream of desperate converts. Accusations of witchcraft and demonic possession became commonplace, further fueling the paranoia and violence that gripped the land. Visual, a quick flash of a medieval woodcut depicting a burning pyre, shadowy figures silhouetted against the flames. Sound, the distant clang of a sword, followed by a human scream. These forgotten records highlight a profound societal breakdown, where the established moral order crumbled under the weight of cosmic indifference. The lines between good and evil blurred as communities turned on each other, driven by suspicion and the desperate need for answers. What was once unthinkable became not only thinkable, but necessary in the eyes of those who embraced the cult of the pale sun. The very concept of the sun, once a symbol of divine benevolence, was inverted. It became a prize to be won back, a favor to be bought with blood. The darkness was not just a physical phenomenon, it was a spiritual battlefield, where the souls of men were weighed and found wanting. Visual, a close-up on a child's wooden toy, lying abandoned in the mud near the standing stones, partially covered in ash. Sound, a child's faint, sorrowful whimper quickly fading into silence. The story of the cult of the pale sun is not just a tale of forgotten heresy, it is a chilling reminder of humanity's fragility, of how quickly we can descend into savagery when faced with overwhelming fear and the apparent abandonment of our gods. The official histories, eager to project an image of unwavering faith and resilience, carefully expunged these darker episodes. But the lingering question remains, did their desperate, blood-soaked prayers achieve anything? Did their sacrifices somehow appease the Night Father, or were they merely another tragic footnote in the year the sun vanished, leading to an even more profound act of darkness? The answers lie buried not just in the earth, but in the deeper, more unsettling secrets of human nature. Whoop Human Me. Part 8. The Irish Annals of Famine of Souls, video, opens on a windswept, ancient Irish landscape, characterized by rolling hills shrouded in thick, almost perpetual mist. A round tower stands stoically against the gray sky. Sound, the distant mournful cry of a curlew carried on the damp air. While the Byzantine Empire wrestled with plague and censorship, and continental Europe succumbed to fear and cults, the isolated monasteries of Ireland diligently kept their own records, far from the direct gaze of imperial decrees. The Annals of Ulster, the Annals of Innisfallen, and other monastic chronicles from this period offer a unique, unvarnished perspective on the dry fog and its devastating consequences. Visual, a monk, his face drawn and pale, transcribing an entry by candlelight in a cold stone cell. Sound, the rhythmic scrape of quill on vellum, the occasional cough. Known for their meticulous and often stark entries, these Irish annals speak not just of famine and disease, but of a profound spiritual desolation that gripped the island. Unlike the continental chroniclers who often focused on external events, the Irish monks delved deeper into the internal impact of the darkness, describing a famine of souls that accompanied the famine of the body. The entry for 536 AD in the Annals of Ulster is chillingly direct, a failure of bread in this year. Such a terse statement, yet it carries the weight of utter catastrophe in a society utterly dependent on its harvests. The years that followed are filled with increasingly desperate entries. Great mortality, pestilence, the sun greatly obscured, visual, a close-up on a faded page of an Irish annal, the script stark and precise, highlighting the dates 536 and 537.